In this video, I'm showing the best settings for better visibility, better aim, and better movement. Let's talk about it. If you're anything like me, the Black Ops 7 Warzone update busted all of your settings, and I had to go through and individually change almost everything. So today, I wanted to show you what I changed, what I feel is gonna help, and how you can improve your game by setting up the right settings. So immediately, what I want you to do is go into your settings. Now, if you're in the regular screen, what you can do is you can press the pause button, go all the way to the right, and you can click on controller right there. But what I'm gonna do is we're gonna be checking this out in the firing range so that I can explain how everything works along the way. So like I said, we're gonna click settings, go to the controller tab, then go to the controller section. I guess the controller section and the controller tab. Obviously, you want your aiming input device to be set to controller, but I'm going to be using the default button layout. Now, a lot of people you're gonna see are going to be using something like tactical, something like bumper jumper, something like bumper jumper tactical, stick and move, stuff like that. These are all great options, but for me, I use this. This is an aim controller. Actually, I have the Expel Pro Plus right here. And these are great because they have back paddles. And because they have back paddles, I don't need to use any kind of other button layout, and I'm more accurate to boot. And the reason why is because having back paddles allows you to use movement while being able to aim. And with the massive nerf to aim assist recently, it's one of those things that you're gonna want. And I highly recommend you go to expel.gg, use code Expel at checkout, and grab one of these controllers before the discount runs out on the 15th to get yours for $199. Now, the reason I mention all of this is because, and I kid you not, it makes a big difference. Looking at tactical, you're gonna see that it basically makes it where your right stick is your circle button. Looking at bumper jumper, you have L1 as your X button, and down seems to be something, I don't know, it's very confusing. But there's a lot of different options here. Basically, I leave it on default because that means I can move left to right, I can jump, and I can crouch normally, or I can use my back paddles. And like I said, what I do is I have these bottom back paddles as jump and slide, and then my top back paddles are both set to ping, live ping the enemy, so that I can move while live ping so that I can get people actively. So that's what I like to do, and I think it's actually super important to have that as an option. It's entirely up to you. You don't have to grab one of these controllers. If you're not gonna grab one of these controllers, I would recommend going for something like tactical, just so that you can slide with the right stick. It's not my favorite. You could do bumper jumper tactical. Basically, at the end of the day, the issue is when you push down on those, you're gonna end up messing with your aim. So that's the biggest problem. That's why I switched to default. Either way, my horizontal stick sensitivity, a lot of the times you're not looking at people that are high in the sky, so I like to keep my horizontal a little bit higher so that I can move left to right pretty quick, but then up to down is a little bit slower. So you'll see I've got 1.55 and then a 1.4 for the vertical. Now, if you're playing multiplayer, you will want to turn up the horizontal stick sensitivity a little bit, but it's completely up to you. I just think that in Warzone, you're not in these like super tight-knit situations most of the time. I did find myself testing out 1.6, but 1.55 seems to be my go-to, so I'm gonna leave it there. With that said, I keep the next four turned off. I definitely turn off controller vibration. When your controller is vibrating, you are going to miss more shots because it shakes the right analog stick as well, because that vibration motor is in your right palm. That's a big deal. So turn off controller vibrations, you're gonna hit more shots. Same thing with trigger effect. It takes an extra second. You can set that to full, then I can go in and I have to, if I, and I'll show you here. I pull to there, it's not shooting yet. And then I have to pull all the way down to get it to shoot. And what that means is that when you go to shoot somebody, you're not gonna be able to. But if I set it up like this, I'm instantly shooting enemies. Now, and actually cool thing about these controllers, funny enough, is that they have the ability to go from this to this. So if you feel like it's not fast enough, you can also change to that. So those are called active triggers. Now, next up, we have dead zone inputs. I wonder if I can actually, so if I'm to reset this tab, this is what it looks like. I'll show you right here. Everything is gonna be exactly as I show you. And you're gonna laugh at how terrible this is. So right here, this is your dead zones by default. Your left stick minimum is 15, your left stick max is 100, your right stick minimum is 15, and your right stick max is 100. Your left trigger is 15, your right trigger is 15. And what that means is that it's gonna keep you from having stick drift. Sure. but it's not good because that means that you're going to be completely inaccurate. You're losing 15% of the most important part of your analog stick for aiming. That small, like detail-oriented aiming in the center of your stick, the tiny, tiny maneuvers that you're making, big deal. Big deal. That's how you hit perfect snipes. If you don't have that, you are going to miss a majority of your shots. So I always go in, and you can test it for yourself. If I do this, I'm trying to get on target, and I'm just missing. It's like I swear to God, that almost felt like I faked it, and I didn't. I could not hit that target. But if I go in and I change my settings, follow what I do here. You want to do the exact same thing. Go to the left stick. Instead of setting it to 0, I would recommend setting it to 1. Naturally, any controller, even these that have TMR sticks that, you know, get rid of 99.9% of stick drift and can be recalibrated if there are any issues, even these will have a 0 to 1% stick drift. So and by the way, it doesn't actually show up when you're aiming if it's set to 0 to 1, so it doesn't really matter. But I always set my left stick minimum to 1 just in case, because it does not affect you in the slightest outside of if you're laying on the ground and you don't want to move in case you're trying to hide. Then your left stick max so that you can run quickly as fast as possible. I set this to 70, maybe even like 69 or 65. I've seen some people go as low as 60. And what that does is it gets you moving very quickly just by moving your analog stick 60% of the way. So you get that instant sprinting. So I'm going to leave mine at 70. You can actually set yours to 60 if you feel like you don't want to move your stick as far. Next up, move your right stick minimum to 0. I don't care if you have stick drift out your ass. Turn it to 0. Do not ever change it from 0. Get a new controller if you are having that many issues. If you go above 0, you are going to feel like you cannot aim because your right stick is where you aim the most. So if you're trying to get on target and you're missing 1 to 2% of that stick, the detail-oriented area of the stick where you got to be within a micrometer, a millimeter of your enemy, give it up. Just give it up. You may as well just not play if you're changing that. So right stick minimum, set it to 0. 100,000%. Right stick max, you want that set to 100. This is going to give you the full scale of your right analog stick so that you can go from 0 to 100. I don't even know why these are set to 15. Set it to 0. That way you can instantly start shooting for the love of God. So immediately now, I can go in and I'm on target, on target, on target. It is that big of a difference to have your dead zones in place. And if you don't believe me, I went back and I tried Warzone from level 1 on a completely fresh account with completely fresh settings. And the settings were the biggest reason that I could not get more eliminations. So if you don't believe me, go watch that video. Either way, moving a little bit further into the aiming tab. Now, things have changed over here just a little bit, and I'm going to walk you through what I recommend for you. It's a little complicated now. This used to be a very simple tab. I would recommend the same thing for every single person. I'm changing it up a little bit. So for me, my sensitivity multiplier, I don't mess with any of this. I leave this all at 1. And then look inversion, keep that at standard. Make sure target aim assist, ADS aim assist is set to on. You don't need to touch these two tabs right there. But then go into aiming advanced settings. This is where things get a little weird. So your ADS sensitivity transition timing is by default, I believe, set to gradual. Go ahead and set that to instant. Then your third person, doesn't really matter, but leave that to assist. And your aim response curve type. Now, I've tried a few things here. A lot of people right now are telling you, oh, you're going to get more aim assist if you use linear. That's true to a certain extent. If you are sniping or shooting anyone at a distance, you will lose your aim assist entirely. Anything past like 20 meters. If you only get in close range gunfights, sure, try linear if you're feeling it. I don't recommend that. I recommend standard. Now, personally, I use dynamic because I'm used to the curve of dynamic, but standard right now is giving the most amount of aim assist after the update. I don't know how to explain it, but I've tried it repeatedly. It does slow down your aim just a little bit, it feels like. So maybe move that up like 1 or 2 notches on your sensitivity. But try standard if you're struggling to find that aim assist, and you're going to find that it sticks way harder. I don't know why. It does. I tried this with a sniper, and I went from not being able to hit shots to literally instantly hitting. Dynamic for me, I'd rather lose a little bit of aim assist so that I know exactly where my aim is going to go. It feels something natural to me. So if you are one of those people where you feel like you're really good at aiming, you don't need an outrageous amount of aim assist, try dynamic. If you're someone that is not that great at aiming and you need a little bit of help from the aim assist, try standard. It's a very, very small difference, but it does make a difference. So that's why I'm telling you everything. You don't need to mess with your aim response curve, slope, scale, or anything like that. Now, next up, custom sensitivity per zoom. This is something that a lot of people change all of them by default. If I actually go back to my sensitivity multiplier, you can see the ADS sensitivity multiplier. I don't change that. I like to go in and I change each one individually, because if you're using a sniper and you're trying to shoot somebody, in fact, actually, I can show you. If I'm trying to shoot somebody and I'm trying to track somebody at a distance, and my sniper is going slower than that person is, say they're in a car or something, I'm gonna go like this and the car's like way over here, I won't be able to track them, right? Now in that close range, it doesn't matter because I need to move a little bit slower, right? I need to be able to flick just a little bit, target to target to target. But at that distance, I'm trying to track these enemies with my sniper rifle. And if I can't do that properly, I'm not gonna get the kill. So what I do is I have my settings to where in the close range, my low zoom and my 2 to 3 times is set to 0.8 and 0.8. Your 4 to 5 times is a little bit near that middle amount of distance, probably like 30-ish meters, maybe a little bit more than that. Same with 6 to 7, you're kind of pushing up to 50 meters. But you can see I've got that set to 1.05, 8 to 9 is set to 1.05, and high zoom is set to 1.10. There's going to be times where you want it to be a little higher, going to be times you want it to be a little bit lower. If you learn the sniper that you use the most, set your sensitivity based on that sniper. Figure out what the zoom is on that sniper and set your sensitivity for that sniper, because it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, that's what you're going to be using, right? So that's kind of how I like to do it. Now, next up, we have the movement tab under controller. You have your sprint assist. By default, this is set to off. Turn that to tactical sprint assist. Your delay, set that to 0. Sideways and backwards should also be set to on. Next up, mantle and crouch assist. Both off. Corner slice. I'll show you what this looks like, I think. Maybe. Is there a corner around here? I don't know if there's a corner around here. Can I do it? I don't think it's going to do it. That's funny. So there's no corners in this building, but basically what happens, well, this is a corner. This is literally a corner. It doesn't see it as a corner. How interesting is that? So there's no corner slice in the firing range, but basically how it works is your gun starts cocking sideways a little bit. Turn that off. You don't want that by any means. Wall jump assist, turn that off. Slide and dive behavior. I'm going to explain this to you pretty quick. So basically, by default, I'll go into the settings and show you. By default, it's probably set to like tap to slide. And what that does is you tap the circle button. You'll tap the circle button to slide, and you'll hold it to dive. However, that adds a delay in your slide, which means it's not instant. The other option is to do tap to dive, which is the opposite. Then you have slide only. If you don't dive at all, you can press the circle button and it'll immediately slide, which is great, but now you don't have the ability to dive. And if you're anything like me, you have learned to use diving to get yourself out of weird situations. You don't need dive only, by all means, please do not use that. But the way that hybrid works is hybrid allows you to, I believe it's your sprint button. So you're going to be pressing the sprint button in and the circle at the same time. And what that allows you to do is to dive. So I will tap these at the same time and I'm diving. You can see me doing that. Otherwise, there's a bit of a delay, but this gets rid of that delay entirely. So if you can memorize how to utilize this, and by the way, it's easier if you have the Expel Pro Plus, you can go to expel.gg, yada, yada, yada. It's easier to do that and map it to a back paddle, which is what I do. I have my dive at the bottom left, or I have my circle button set to the bottom left. So I just press the sprint button only when I want to dive. That's it. That's the only time I have to press the sprint button. Okay. So we've got slide and dive behavior, set that to hybrid. That's going to be huge for you. Automatic airborne mantle, turn that off. Sprint restore, turn that on. Slide maintain sprint, turn that on. Parachute automatic behavior should be set to always or free for all. You want to set that to off. That means you can get as close as possible to the ground before your enemy can, and then you can pull your chute lower. You will splat sometimes. It's going to happen. Everyone does it. It's okay. All right? It's okay. So set that to off. Wall jump activation, set that to press. Combat roll assist, set that to always, just so that you don't splat the ground if you have Mountaineer on. Just letting you know. Slide and combat roll behavior, I have that set to tap to roll. Combat roll camera is third person. You can set it to first person, sure, but you're gonna get nauseous. I watched Pipe do that the other day. I almost yacked on my screen, dude. So do not do that by any means. Movement advanced settings. Let's go ahead and dive in there. We have sprint and tactical sprint behavior. Maybe set to hold, I doubt it, but make sure it's set to toggle. Auto move forward, make sure that's set to off. Auto door peek, maybe set to on by default. For the love of God, set that to off, because if you walk up to a door and you're ADS'd at the door, you'll immediately open it. Now, the issue with that is that it makes noise. So if you do that and you're waiting for an enemy to push through and you're ADS'd at the door and it opens the door, they know you're there. So don't do that for the love of God. Now, next up is grounded mantle. This is one of those things that's very interesting because you may think, oh, grounded mantle, just like automatic airborne mantle, you don't want something that automatically does this, that, or the other thing. Actually, no. Grounded mantle you want set to on. And the reason why is because there are windows within the game that if you try to jump through the window, you'll just bump into it. You'll literally, and just stand there and whack it right with your face. But grounded mantle forces you through that window. The only issue is sometimes when you're trying to jump on top of an object, you'll mantle over it. It's going to get you killed every once in a while, but it's better than having your like lack of ability to get away from gunfights. And that's why I think it's important to have grounded mantle on. Next up, tactical sprint activation. Make sure that is set to single tap run, meaning that if you do turn on sprinter, you will be able to run just by moving your analog stick. You don't need to press it in. There's no need to click the button. You just move it around, right? That's all you're gonna be doing. Plunging underwater, set that to free, and sprinting door bash, set that to on. Otherwise, you are literally going to run into doors. Next up is vehicle behaviors. These are relatively important. Vehicle control mode, set that to driver control. Score streak, aim-based. Vehicle camera recenter. This is going to be set to short delay. Set this to off. The reason why is when you hop in a vehicle, sometimes it's going to reset after a certain amount of time. You don't want it to do that. You want it to always look the way that you are looking. And the same thing goes for camera initial position. Make sure that is set to free look so that it does exactly what I just said. Lean out activation should be set to left, or I think it's the right analog stick, pushing that in. And then we move over to combat. Now, rounding off the controller part of this video, we have these settings. I personally set mine to prioritize body shield, entirely up to you. Armor, plate activation behavior, whatever, should be set to apply all. C4 detonation, 1 by 1. Equipment behavior set to hold. Manual fire set to press. Moving down to combat advanced. This is entirely up to you, but I'm going to walk you through it and explain why I do what I do. So, the first thing that you may want to change is weapon mount exit. I'm not sure if this is set to instant, but set it to short delay. The reason why is if you accidentally flick your left analog stick to slightly move or something like that, it'll knock you out of it. And then you'll immediately go back into it, and then it'll knock you out of it over and over and over. That is not fun. That is not good. That is not something you want. So I highly recommend you set that to short delay to allow yourself an instant to get out of that weapon mount on your own. Next, for Warzone, you want to make sure you have prioritize interact. A lot of people are going to tell you to do tap to interact. No, do prioritize interact. That way you can reload when times are available for you to tap to reload. Basically, if you set prioritize interact, what's going to happen is if there's something on the ground, like a door or something like that, you're going to press square and it's going to open that door. It's going to pick up that item. However, if there's nothing there, you want to be able to reload quickly. You are going to have to hold it and wait for that amount of time for your reload to happen because you are not set to tap to reload, right? So when that happens, basically you will want to memorize to hold to reload just so that you do it all the time so that you're not constantly screwing up. Always hold the reload, but it'll reload faster if you have it set to prioritize interact, if that makes sense. So next up, mantle cancels reload on, sprint cancels reload off, independent akimbo behavior, ADS stick swap off, depleted ammo switch on, off. Now, next up is your kind of like overlay settings. These are up to you. This is what I have mine set to. Change it however you like. Next up, we have our graphic settings. Now, this is where things get a little bit interesting. I'm going to run you through what my settings are. I don't necessarily recommend my exact settings. So I'll tell you what I recommend to you just based on, you know, kind of what makes sense. So immediately, we're going to be in the display settings. Make sure display mode, and by the way, if you're on console, you may not have all of these settings. You will have some of these settings. Do not just skip this section. It is so important that you get all that you can from this. If you just skip this section, it is going to mess with how well your PlayStation or your Xbox runs. So make sure to get all that you can from this video by watching this section as well. I know it's 10 minutes of your life, but for the love of God, if you get one thing out of it that helps your gameplay, you're gonna want it. With that said, we have display mode. Make sure it's set to full screen exclusive, borderless, or extended window, or windowed will all lose frames. Full screen exclusive will not. Display monitor, make sure that's set to your right monitor. Your display adapter should be whatever GPU you want to use. Screen refresh rate should be the highest number available. Display resolution should be the highest number available. Aspect ratio should be fine at automatic. If it's not working right, choose one of the other ones and then go back to automatic. Display gamma. This is entirely up to you and dependent upon the kind of monitor or TV that you're on. A lot of people, if you're on a TV, I recommend doing 2.4. If you're on a monitor, I recommend 2.2. Personally, for my monitor, I like the colors that come from 2.4, and so I use 2.4. Even though sRGB would technically be better on this monitor, I just personally prefer the brightness and the color that comes from BT1886. So next up is the gamma and the brightness. If you are struggling to see and you are on an IPS monitor or you are on a TV that is not an OLED, change this to about 57. Otherwise, if you're on an OLED or, you know, a decent TV, set it to 50. NVIDIA Reflex Low Latency. Now, just reading through this, on low latency mode is enabled and optimizing system latency. That's good. On plus boost, low latency mode is now enabled and optimizing system latency. Additionally, GPU clock frequencies are kept high in CPU bound cases. This can reduce latency but will increase GPU power draw, which means that it could technically possibly lower your frame rates. However, what I would recommend is check your system latency, and the way that you'll do that is in your telemetry. So what you can do is go to interface, global telemetry, all on. Now, if you look at the top left, and I'll show it larger, if you look at the top left, you can see GPU time and CPU time. They're up there, I promise. And what that is that's your system latency, the speed at which it like is rendering frames and stuff like that. If it is like 10 or 15, that's really high. You need to figure out a better way to figure this stuff out, or maybe change some of your settings. But that's kind of the idea of it. Anyway, let me go back to graphics. What I would recommend is go through, try it with on plus boost, and see which one runs better on your system. But you want to get the rest of these settings as well. Eco mode preset, for the love of God, don't do either of these. Make sure to set it to custom, VSync off, custom frame rate. Set that to unlimited. However, I will note, if you want and you feel like you have a system that is struggling, you can limit these to like 5 higher than what your system will do. So like mine, if I scroll up, you can see that my screen refresh rate is 240. What I would do is 5 to 10 higher, so 250. But I like to keep it at unlimited because the more that you render these frames, the faster the game is going to render and stuff like that. However, it does draw a little bit more power from your GPU. By the way, reduce menu render resolution, optimal or maximal, completely up to you. I just have mine set to optimal. Pause game rendering, set that to off, or if you constantly tab out of your game, set that to on, obviously. Reduce quality when inactive. Also, if you're not there for more than 10 minutes, you can literally set that to 10 minutes so that it is not rendering all this stuff and using power in your house. So that's completely up to you as well. Focus mode. Do not set this to anything above 0. It will make your monitors go black. If you have anything other than your main monitor, it will literally turn them black to where you cannot see anything and you can't interact with those monitors. It is an issue. Do not use that. High dynamic range, completely up to you. I keep mine off. I don't like HDR in any capacity for some reason. I've not figured it out yet. Now this setting area, quality, is where things get a little bit different. Now in the past, I've recommended Fidelity Cast. Now let me hop in. I don't know if you're gonna be able to tell the difference, but if I zoom in down there, you can see fidelity cast looks like this, right? And I've now switched it to NVIDIA DLSS quality transformer. And clearly this is much sharper. Now, I don't know if you're able to tell because of YouTube kind of making the video look worse with post-processing, but it does look infinitely better. Now, I don't know what they did to cause this, but in the past, I've always recommended fidelity cast. In fact, I was told by PC tuners that I should still recommend fidelity cast. The reason I am not going to recommend that to you is because fidelity cast will make your game look less sharp. It is important to have sharpness, especially if you're someone that likes to use snipers, so that you can actually make sure that you can see the people that you're shooting at. I played on fidelity cast for like 5 games, first day. I missed every sniper shot. Couldn't figure it out. Couldn't hit my shots. Couldn't figure out why. Obviously, there's issues with Black Ops 6 sniper or 7 snipers, such as life. But also, I couldn't see the guy. They literally, in a distance, look like a blob. I don't know what am I supposed to do about that? So instead of doing that, I asked around, and CPreds and Shady, they said they were trying NVIDIA DLSS quality 100 transformer, and I can see, but it does lower your frames by a good 1 to 3% depending on your system. So if you prefer more frames, fidelity cast. If you would rather be able to see, use this. That's what I will say. That is the best that I can give you. VRAM scale target depends upon your system. If you have something that needs a little bit more, I would recommend... Oh, what just happened? If you have something that needs a little bit more, something like a 2070, 3070, 4070, I recommend bumping that up to like 80. If you have a lot of stuff going in the background, you don't want to max out your VRAM, because what ends up happening is once you do max out, you hit that like 90 to 95% VRAM usage, your game will crash. That's how you get those game crashes, is by your VRAM hitting an upper limit. When it hits that upper limit, it's going to crash the game and you're going to get a DirectX error. That is what happens every time. So I highly recommend setting it to somewhat of a lower number. You can set it to 90 if you want. I don't even do that anymore. I set mine to 70. Now, next up, for a lot of you, there are 2 settings here that are going to crash your games. I've figured this out from extensive testing: texture resolution and shadow quality. Do literally whatever you want. Aside from these, set these, if you are on a lower end system, to very low, or actually in texture resolution's case, I would set that to low, right? So texture resolution, set it to low, and shadow quality, set it to very low. Set those 2 to that, your game will crash infinitely less. Infinitely less if you're having crash issues. This is going to help you, I promise. However, normal works just fine if you're on a decent, like 80 series or 90 series graphics card, right? So if you're in something like that, I would recommend using normal texture resolution so that you can see a little bit better. Shadow quality doesn't really matter. You can still set that to very low. For my videos, I keep mine set to normal. I don't go above that because that is when you start pushing your GPU. For some reason, texture quality and shadow quality, what that does is that's what spikes your VRAM, and it just like starts stacking on itself. I don't have an explanation for this. People can tell me I'm wrong. I don't give a shit. I've done it for hours in testing. They stack themselves against themselves. So basically you hop into one game and you can start with your VRAM usage at like 60%. And then by the end of the game, it's at 70. Then you back out of that game, it'll drop down to 69. And then the next game, it's at 79. Drops down to 78. Next game, it's at 88. And it keeps stacking until you hit that upper limit on your GPU, which is what starts to get you those DirectX errors. So shadow quality and texture quality are huge whenever it comes to using your VRAM. And because of that, it will cause issues. Now, let's go ahead and go through everything, and I'll walk you through what I use and what you should use. So a lot of these just default to low, honest to God. The reason I set it higher is just for the visual quality of my videos. But like texture filter, I would set that to low. Depth of field, I would set that to off. Detail quality, I would seriously recommend setting it to normal or high. Particle resolution, set that to very low or low. It genuinely does not matter in any capacity whatsoever. Bullet impacts, you definitely want that on. I've seen that it is recommended to turn that off for the sake of frames. However, I do find that it helps me know where people are shooting and whether or not they can hit their shots. So I like to use that information. So I set it to on. If you don't know how to utilize that information, set it to off. I don't care. Persistent effects, I leave that on. It's kind of up to you. Shader quality, set this to low. I know, again, some of my settings are going to be different than what I recommend to you. This is just because my settings are literally for the visual quality of my videos. Next up, on-demand texture streaming. I have not seen a massive difference, but I know that this can actually cause issues with packet burst. So you can set it to minimal. I set mine to optimized. Allocated texture cache size is 64, which is 64 gigabytes. By the way, you can lower that if you need to. I think it'll go down to like, yeah, 16. I set mine to 64 gigabytes just so that it has a texture cache. Download limit, set it to on, and set your daily download limit as low as physically possible. Set it to 1. I did not realize that there wasn't a daily download limit on this whenever we played the first day of the update. And you can see that on that bottom right side, I was actually getting 5 gigabytes, 7 gigabytes, stuff like that getting downloaded, which is insane to me. Next up, local texture streaming quality. These are things, if I'm not wrong, that are already downloaded. It's kind of up to you. I set mine to default because I feel like it looks good. However, this is a medium GPU and VRAM usage. So if you're struggling with frames, set it to low. In-game video quality, set it to low. It just doesn't matter. Shadow quality, again, we already talked about this. I would recommend one of the lowest settings. You can see it goes up more and more on the VRAM usage the more that you change it, but it does impact your frames drastically. So I would do normal, or sorry, I would do low or very low. It looks like low does the exact same amount of VRAM usage, so low is probably what you want. Screen space, shadows, set that to off. This is just for your weapons. I set mine to off, or I set mine to high for the sake of the video, but set it to off. Actually, am I high right here? Okay, cool. So, sorry, I just had to check something. I was curious or something. But yeah, set it to off. I have mine set to high for something else. Occlusion and screen space lighting, I have that set to off. I just don't like it. Don't like it at all. Screen space reflections, you do not need that. These are like static reflections, not character reflections, which means that it will not pick up a character moving throughout the map. So you don't need it. It does not give you any additional information. Doesn't make it look any better either, in my personal opinion. Static reflection quality, the exact same thing. You do not need that because it is static reflections. Next up, terrain quality. I have mine set to high. This is your tessellation from before. I have mine set to high. I would recommend setting yours to about medium to low. It used to be based on distance, but for some reason they changed that to where it's no longer based on distance from what I can tell. Yeah, it's not. But I would recommend, I've tried it for the sake of fidelity cast to see if setting it to very high made a difference. It doesn't. It does not. So if you're wanting to use, fidelity cast, setting this to very high will not help you. Either way, I would set this to one of the lower settings because it is a medium usage on your VRAM and on your GPU. I have a 5090, guys. So if you see me using a higher thing, it's just because I have more to use. Next up, volumetric quality, set it to low. The reason that I would recommend setting this to low is because when you have a sun giving sun rays down, what'll happen is it'll actually bounce off of the surface of something and it'll block your view of an enemy. So I found that if I set this to low, it actually keeps from blocking the view of my enemy. Now, it looks a little bit better if you set it to high. I actually love the way that it looks for the sake of like the beginning of videos, like my intro clips and stuff like that. But setting it to low is definitely what you should do for gaming. Deferred physics quality, for the love of God, set that off. Weather grid volumes, you can see that it shows a character that like has snow on them right there. If you don't want your enemies blending into the background and you want to be able to see them really well, you can set it to off. Next up, water quality. You don't want wave wetness, that is pointless and takes GPU for literally no reason. Set it to water caustics so that you can see better in the water. Next up, I'm going to apply that. Let's go over to view. This is where things get very interesting. A lot of people are going to tell you that if you are a controller player, you want to keep your field of view between 100 and 110. If you want to see everything going on around you, set it higher. However, it will feel like you have less aim assist. You have the same amount, but because it looks different, it'll feel different. So just letting you know. I would recommend going 110 to 120 at minimum 110 to 120. I keep mine at 120 all the time. ADS field of view, set that to affected. Weapon field of view, I would actually set that to wide. I don't know why that was on normal. I wonder if that's been messing with the way that things look. So set that to wide. Vehicle field of view, also set that to wide. Third person field of view, you're never going to be in third person, but set it to 90 for the sake of it. Now, there's a couple of settings right here that are going to change the way that the game looks for you, right? So if I turn on weapon, world motion blur, set these to 100. And let's say by default, I set this back down, I think to 90. Look how much my screen shakes whenever I'm shooting a gun. It's like really hard to see what I'm shooting at, right? I'll actually zoom in here and get a quick reload. I shoot right here. Look how hard it is to like see. And even though it feels like I'm getting more aim assist, it still like bounces off of the target the same as it always does, right? So what I would recommend if you want to have that streamer aim, set your your field of view all the way up, turn off world and weapon motion blur, turn these to 50%, and then you're set. Because if I zoom in now, you can see it looks like nothing is moving at all. It's way easier to stay on target, and even though it may feel like I have less aim assist, I have the same amount. I can just see better, and it looks better, and it doesn't look like I have zero aim, right? So those are kind of the big thing there. Next up, inverted flashbang. A lot of people like to set this to on so that it gets dark and then brightens up as it comes back. If you have it set to that, understand the way that light works. When you can't physically see something because it's dark, it's like covering your eyes and then slowly doing this. But if it's bright, then you can see more all the time, and then it's coming down to like regular. So if you get flashbanged, you want it to brighten and come back down because you'll be able to see more on the way back to the default like brightness. If you go the other way, you're just gonna see less. So I would recommend always setting this to off, even though it's annoying. It's definitely something that I would recommend setting to off. Parachute camera perspective is kind of up to you. A lot of people like to use third person on infill only. I just, if I need it, I'll press L1. Like, that's all that matters to me. So I just set it to first person. Now, next up is audio. Okay, so I'm going to explain audio here. I do have my audio set up in a way to where it allows me to hear things a little bit differently just because of the way that I have my headphones set up. So I use voice meter and something else, but you can actually use different things across the board. With that in mind, you'll see that I have a hi-fi cable, and basically that's a virtual cable that allows me to like change it a little bit, and it also allows me to get 7.1 surround sound into my ears so that I can hear better. Those are two things that I'm just going to point out off rep. Now, next up, let's go ahead and hit our volumes here. Gameplay music volume, set that to 0. Dialogue volume, set it to 40. Effects volume, set it to 100. And cinematic volume, set it to 0. These, in my opinion, have been the best overall, like, kind of mixing of the different kinds of audio, but you just don't need gameplay music at any point, because if you're in an intense moment in the game and all you're hearing is no, you want to hear your enemy's footsteps, right? Like that, it's just so crazy. It's so crazy that happens. Give me 2 seconds. So what I've gone ahead and done is I've changed it to where it's kind of the default audio for the game. And what I do is basically I have my own setup to where I am tuning my audio. But the reason why is because the kind of headphones that I have, and I do recommend these headphones because they're open back, but the kind of headphones that I have are a little bit tinny, and I have a sensitivity to tinny sounds. What is it called when I think tinnitus. It's tinnitus. So I have that. So the way that I set my stuff up is a little bit different, but what I've done is I've set it up as close as I physically can to the way that I hear, so that you can set it up the same way in the game. So I'll show you, you want to set this to stereo, or if you have the option, depending on the system that you're on, because you can also activate Dolby on PlayStation and Xbox. Both of those do have the option. I'm pretty sure they're 100% free, which means that by default, you actually get better audio on PlayStation and Xbox, interestingly enough. So go ahead and set that to 7.1 surround sound if you have it available to you. Otherwise, set it to stereo. Next up, you don't want to turn on enhanced headphone mode, but you do want to go down to audio mix and either use home theater or sucker punch. Basically, sucker punch, and I'll actually let you hear it. This is what sucker punch sounds like. And what you'll notice is that the gunfire sounds are a little bit higher, but the footstep sounds will also be a little bit higher and louder, right? So that's what makes sucker punch really good. However, my issue with sucker punch is when there's like a precision airstrike or something like that in the air, what you'll end up seeing and what you'll run into is that that precision airstrike will completely block the sound of the footsteps if a player decides to push you while there's a PA. So if you set it to home theater, it's a little bit better, a little bit more easy to deal with. And so you can also hear those sounds a little bit more individually. Basically what happens is like, when you look at like an EQ, what ends up happening is that you have footsteps at this sound, you have PAs at this sound, and you have shooting at this sound, right? So if we have all three of these right here, they're like really tight together, okay? So then when you change it to home theater, it starts really spreading these points apart so that you can tell what they are individually. And that's why I personally like to use home theater, though it is a little bit quieter, and you may need to turn your volume up a little bit. It will allow you to hear those sounds individually. Now, that's just my personal preference. A lot of people are going to tell you to use PC, this, that, or the other thing. There's Sucker Punch, Bass Cut, Bass Boost, headphones, Treyarch Mix, Voice Boost. At the very least, I would recommend Sucker Punch or home theater. I just use home theater. Mono audio, make sure that is set to off. That is going to make it where the things you hear on your right and your left are going to sound the exact same. So if someone's coming from your right, it'll literally sound like they're coming from both sides. So make sure that is set to off. Mute game when minimized, completely up to you. I actually probably should set that to on, but mute licensed music, again, completely up to you. I'd actually turn that off if I were you. I'm going to keep that on now that I think about it. Asymmetrical hearing compensation. This is where things are going to get a little interesting. Now, I would recommend setting this to on. Like I said earlier, I have my audio tuned, but I've built out a tuning in the game that sounds very, very similar, as close as I could get it to what I hear in my audio tune. So if you're ever like, Expel, your audio sounds different, this is as close as you can get. The only thing that mine does more than this is it lowers gunfire sounds to where they're not like blowing my eardrums out. That's basically the only difference. So looking at this, if you want to get something that sounds way, way better, you can go through, change each of these individually, and you want to match it from left to right. So you've got 250 set to 50, 500 set to 0, 1K set to -35, 2K set to -35, 4K set to -20, 6K set to 50, 8K set to 10, 10K set to 10. Then moving down, you want to do the exact same thing over on the right channel frequencies. And that's going to be what I recommend for your audio settings, because it's going to make you hear footsteps infinitely better than you could before. Now, once you've gone ahead and configured your frequency intensity, what I would also recommend to you is go ahead and go to reduce tinnitus sound and set that to on. That's also going to help your weapons feel a little bit less tinny so that they're not blowing your eardrums. And by the way, if a lot of you have Astros, some of these things are done by default, and Astros also have like a mix amp and stuff like that. However, it's going to hurt because Astros, what they do is they boost the bass. So by default, they'll do that. That goes for a lot of other, things with mix amps. They'll also boost the bass. Any gamer headphones often boosts the bass. Something like Turtle Beach, Astros. I'm trying to think what other ones there are. Steel Series, I think, does that by default. Steel Series, I would recommend actually as probably one of the best. But aside from that, they're all going to kind of boost that bass. So a lot of that is done by default for you to kind of make footsteps louder. However, it just depends on your headphones. So for me, I made the exact same that I hear, right? Like that's what I made in the game. But for you, that may not work for you because of the kind of headphones that you have. I have studio grade headphones that sound really, really good. And they're open back, which I would recommend to everybody. Go to expel.gg/gear if you want to see all my gear and stuff. But they're open back, which means that I can hear a very wide sound floor, which lets me pinpoint exact positions as to where people are. Because if I close my eyes, I can literally imagine, okay, he's running around the building. Bam, he just hit a door. He's walking in like he just switched weapons. Oh, he's reloading. Like I can hear those things because of the wide sound floor that's in these headphones. And so it's completely up to you what you use, but I just gave you what I use, which seems to work the best. With that said, hit marker preset, set that to default, and voice chat is busted right now. I'm going to give you the best fix that I can for it. Basically, you need to unmute yourself every single time you hop into a match, but it doesn't always work. So just letting you know. Voice chat volume, I have mine set to 100 for you. You probably don't need it that high. I have it set to 100 because I can change it on my audio interface. So set it to like 25 or 50 is what I would recommend. Voice chat on, proximity chat on, body shield chat on, game chat voice, all lobby. Voice chat output device, set it to whatever your headphones are. Communication preset, Keep that off. Microphone level, for the love of God, set it to 20 to 25. Do not go higher than that or you're blowing your teammates' eardrums in 99% of scenarios. Then you can test your microphone by going in and doing this. See? Microphone mode, I have mine set to open mic. That's up to you. If you're on mouse and keyboard, I'd recommend push to talk, but I have mine set to open mic so that I can constantly communicate with my teammates. Mute yourself when connecting to a chat channel. Make sure that is set to off. Set it to off! And then make sure your microphone input device is set to your input device. Now, if you want your game to look a little bit better, we're gonna get into some of those settings right now. Immediately going into the global interface settings, we have menu prompts set to automatic. Gameplay tips set to off. Skip introduction movie, set that to on so that you can get back into a game as fast as possible if you do crash. Skip kill cam, do not set that to on. Keep it on off. Keep it set to off. Tool tips, I would probably keep that on. I've never had an issue with those popping up and being annoying as hell. Keep it set to on. Telemetry, if you are struggling and you need to see specific things to know whether or not your system is doing well, set that to all on. Otherwise, custom is just fine, and you can choose the ones that you want by going down and being like, oh, I want to see my FPS, I want to see my server latency, I want to see stuff like that. That's what I would recommend. Telemetry label size, so that you can see it, I would probably recommend setting to larger because it goes in an area where you're not going to see a lot of stuff on your screen anyway. Network in-game alert icons and hardware in-game alert icons, make sure those are set to on so you know what's going on with your system. And then next up is the fun stuff. Actually, yeah. So visual support preset, set it to off. Subtitles, doesn't matter. Subtitles, doesn't matter. 0, doesn't matter. Default. Now, color customization. This is the fun stuff right here. This is going to make your game look infinitely better. So if I go here and I go there and I click that, you see how dreary it looks? You see how nasty it looks? It's so sad. So sad. Then I go in, I go to settings, go to color customization, set that to filter 2, set it to both. World color intensity, you can actually turn that up if you want. I actually use a saturation filter in OBS. Otherwise, I'd do it as well. But 75 to 100, and then interface color intensity, set that to 100. And look how much better that looks. It's so bright and so poppy. You can actually see everything. Perfect. So that's how you're going to be able to see a little bit better in the game. Gameplay HUD. Your widget visibility, set it to on. Minimap visibility, set it to on. HUD info visibility, set it to custom by doing abbreviated for the player names. Keep elimination feed on and keep in-game text chat on whatever you want. Really doesn't matter. HUD bounds, make sure that is set to the maximum amount. So you can see I can move mine down and up. You want to make it to go to the very edge of your screen, in my personal opinion. If you want to be able, if you're on like a large television or something, like a 70-inch TV, and you don't want to look up like that, if you don't want to do that, what you can do is you actually go in and change your HUD bounds a little bit to be super tiny. So you can see right here that I've kind of moved it in. And what that'll do is it'll bring your minimap and all your other HUD a little bit closer to the center of your screen so that you don't have to turn your head so much. So entirely up to you, but I just wanted to give that a heads up because I know a lot of people, heads up display, don't know about it. Tactical sprint stamina bar. I would recommend displaying this and putting it near your health bar. Vehicle HUD prompts, completely up to you. Mine are set to fade after 10 seconds because I know what I'm doing, but if you need to see them, set it to never disappear. Buy station closes when damaged. For the love of God, make sure that's set up to off, because if you get shot while you're in a buy station, you want to be able to finish buying what it is. So if you're trying to buy back a teammate and you get shot and it won't buy back the teammate because it closed the buy station, that's a big no-go. So set that to off. Weapon inspect, attachment info, set that to on so that you can see the enemy weapon that you love so much. Custom ping duration. I actually set this to infinite, and the reason why is because I find that being able to ping something, I don't want it to disappear in a few seconds. I want to be able to go back, find that ping, and just actually go to that ping without it disappearing randomly for whatever reason. Ping duration, I guess, really doesn't matter because it doesn't get cleared. And then kill feed duration. I have mine set to extended, which is 30 seconds so that I can see, because the kill feed also shows when people disconnect. And the reason I say this is because there's times where there's a hacker in the game. And what I do is I want to know if the hacker gets banned or I want to know if the hacker disconnects so that I can play properly. So if you set this to 30 seconds, you have the best chance because sometimes hacker kills you. You report them, you want to see if they get banned. When you go into the gulag, a lot of the times the kill feed will not pop up on the left-hand side. So there's no way for you to know what's going on. So I set mine to extended to give me 30 seconds. Radar, you can see it on the right-hand side, right beside this right here. That's set to on. You do not want that set to on. You want to make sure that radar is set to off. Otherwise, your whole minimap will disappear. Minimap rotation, I have it set to on. I think it looks the best whenever it rotates and you stay looking the same way so that you can constantly know what way is what. What you can actually do is if you have a small, like, thin strip of, like, what is it called? Like tape? Sorry, I couldn't think of the word tape. If you get tape and then just draw a straight line, you can actually see directly on, like, literally put the tape on your monitor. I would not recommend this by all means, but I've seen pros do this. You can put the tape on your monitor and then put a line straight ahead to the edge of where the minimap is on the tape. And then what that'll do is allow you to know from the tip of your little point right there, right? You got your point right here, the tip straight up, you will always see what you're aiming at. So if you can line up little red dots and stuff like that, it'll allow you to shoot people through walls, which I think is a funny thing to do. I'm not telling you to do it. I kind of just like take guesses every once in a while. So that's what I do. I don't have tape on my on my mini map. Map assist, set it to auto center. It seems to work best so that you constantly know where you're at. Next up, compass, set it to on. You always want the compass on. Crosshair lines, I have it set to on. Crosshair dot, set it to on. And then you're going to see the dot scale. A lot of people set it to largest. You are going to cover the heads of the enemies if you set it to largest. In fact, I'll show you. Okay. Cool. I'm on the center of his head. And now, I don't even see that guy's head. Tell me where his head's at. Why are people doing this? This is stupid. Unless you're on like a 90-inch TV, this is unnecessary. Stop doing that. You will literally not be able to see your enemies by doing that. So set this to default. Thank you very much. Crosshair opacity, set it to 100. Crosshair color, do not change that. It will change colors on its own whenever you shoot somebody. Do not change your crosshair color. Hit marker visual, set it to on. Hit markers based on damage, set it to on. Motion reduction off. Horizontal line preset, set it to off. Advanced motion control. I'm pretty sure you don't need any of this shit. Keep it all off. I've seen people turn on vignetting and it looks like an old Call of Duty game. That's cool and everything, but it also obscures your vision, so don't do that. This stuff is huge. So look right here. Right here. You can see what happens. Basically, what's going on... Oh. What's going on is that the like final circle stuff pops up in the center of your screen all the time. What I have done is I've changed all of these to all right. And for call out messaging, all right. So now they pop up where my like camera is right here, like literally in this exact area. And what that does is it makes it where it doesn't obscure my like vision in the center of my screen anymore, which is huge, huge. Display duration, make sure that's set to 8 seconds. Invert feeder order, set it to off. Next up, account and network. I think the only things in here, I don't even know what is in here actually. I think that's it, dude. Yeah, you can do dismemberment and gore effects. You can turn that off. I think that helps a little bit on certain things, but aside from that, that's everything, ladies and gentlemen. That is, I believe, every single setting that I would recommend. And now, as you can see, we just absolutely obliterate these targets. It's not even difficult. It is such a big difference to have all these settings set up. And if you're looking for, you know, your friend to figure out how to set all this up, tell them to come watch this video as well. Okay? Because they need it. This stuff needs to get fixed. I can't understand the issues with all these like settings and why they reset everything every single time there's a new game or a new integration, but hopefully this helps. And if you enjoyed, make sure you subscribe to the channel, grab yourself a controller over at expel.gg. You're not going to want to miss out on this massive sale, and I will catch you in the next one.